I woke up on February 3rd to find my mailbox completely gone, with fresh plow marks gouged into my frozen lawn like someone had deliberately carved a path of destruction straight through my property. The metal post that had stood firmly in the ground for the past 8 years had vanished, leaving behind a jagged hole surrounded by chunks of ice and torn earth. My mailbox itself, a sturdy black steel unit that could withstand a Minnesota winter, was nowhere to be seen. What really caught my attention were the deep tire tracks that veered off the road, cut across my yard in a wide arc, and then returned to the street. This wasn't an accident. This was intentional. I stood there in my driveway in Edina, Minnesota, wearing nothing but sweatpants and a hoodie, watching my breath form clouds in the 16-degree air. My neighbor, Tom, was already out scraping ice off his windshield. He looked over at me, then at the missing mailbox, then back at me with raised eyebrows. "When did that happen?" he called out. "No idea. It was here when I got home from work yesterday." Tom walked over, his boots crunching through the snow. He examined the tire tracks with the scrutiny of someone who had lived through 40 Minnesota winters. "That's not from the city plow. Wrong angle, wrong tire pattern. City plows stay on the road unless they're turning around, and they sure don't make loops through people's yards." He was right. I had seen enough snow removal operations in my neighborhood to know what legitimate plowing damage looked like. This was different. This was surgical. I pulled out my phone and snapped several photos of the tracks, the hole where my mailbox had been, and the general destruction of my front lawn. Then I noticed something else. About 20 feet down the road, half buried in a snowbank, I spotted a flash of black metal. I trudged through the knee-deep snow and pulled out my mailbox. The entire assembly had been ripped from the ground, post and all. The concrete base was still attached, snapped cleanly where it had been buried. The door hung open, and my mail was gone. That's when I knew I had a real problem. Missing mail wasn't just annoying, it was federal. I called the police non-emergency line first. The dispatcher took my information and told me an officer would be out within a few hours. Then I called the post office. The woman who answered sounded tired, like she had already fielded 30 calls that morning about snow-related mail issues. "Sir, if your mailbox was damaged during plowing, you'll need to file a claim with the city Public Works Department." "This wasn't the city," I said. "Someone deliberately drove into my yard and removed my mailbox. My mail is missing." Her tone changed immediately. "Missing mail is a federal offense. I'm transferring you to our Postal Inspector Division." The postal inspector who answered introduced himself as Marcus Webb. He had the kind of voice that suggested he took his job very seriously and didn't appreciate anyone messing with the United States Postal Service. "Tell me exactly what you found this morning," he said. I walked him through everything: the missing mailbox, the tire tracks, the location where I found the box, and most importantly, the missing mail. He asked me to email him the photos immediately, which I did while standing in my driveway, my fingers going numb from the cold. "Stay home if you can," Webb said. "I'll be there within an hour. Don't touch anything else." 45 minutes later, a Edina police officer arrived first. Officer Jennifer Martinez was in her early 30s and had the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who had seen every kind of winter chaos Minnesota could throw at her. She examined the scene, took her own photos, and filled out a report. "Any idea who might have done this?" she asked. "I have a suspicion," I said. "My HOA president, Brenda Hutchins, has been on my case for 3 weeks about my mailbox." Martinez looked up from her notepad. "What about it?" "She says it's not the approved style. According to the HOA bylaws, all mailboxes in Prairie Meadows subdivision are supposed to be white with brass numbers and decorative posts. Mine is black steel. But here's the thing. My mailbox was installed by the previous owner in 2016, 2 years before the HOA passed that rule. I'm grandfathered in." "And you told her this?" "Multiple times. She sent me 3 violation notices in the past month. Each one threatened fines if I didn't replace it. I sent her copies of the bylaws showing the date the rule was implemented and documentation that my mailbox predates it. She ignored all of it." Martinez wrote everything down. "That's a pretty extreme reaction to a mailbox dispute." "You don't know Brenda." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from the HOA group chat, and it was from Brenda Hutchins herself. Reminder to all residents, snow removal crews will be working in the neighborhood over the next few days. Please ensure all non-compliant exterior fixtures are removed to avoid accidental damage. The HOA is not responsible for items that violate our community standards. I showed the message to Martinez. She read it twice, her expression hardening. "That's interesting timing," she said. "Send me a screenshot of that." Postal Inspector Webb arrived 10 minutes later in an unmarked sedan. He was a tall black man in his 50s, wearing a dark coat and carrying a tablet and camera. He introduced himself to both Officer Martinez and me, then immediately began documenting the scene with the precision of someone who had done this hundreds of times. He measured the tire tracks, took soil samples from where the mailbox post had been buried, and examined my recovered mailbox like it was evidence in a murder case. Which, in a way, it was. The murder of federal property rights. "Your mail was in here when the box was removed?" he asked. "I got home from work around 6 yesterday evening. I didn't check the mail, but my mail usually arrives between 2 and 4. Webb nodded. "So we're potentially looking at theft of U.S. mail in addition to mailbox tampering. That's 18 U.S.C. Section 1705 and Section 1708. Federal crimes. Over a mailbox dispute? People commit federal crimes over stupider things every day," Webb said. "You mentioned an HOA president. Tell me about that." I explained the entire situation again. Brenda's obsession with the mailbox rule, the violation notices, my documented responses showing I was legally compliant, and the threatening text message that had arrived less than an hour ago. Webb's jaw tightened. "I'm going to need all of that documentation, every email, every letter, every text message. If your HOA president is involved in this, she's committed multiple federal offenses, and I'm going to make sure she understands exactly how serious this is." He gave me his card and told me to compile everything and send it to his office by the end of the day. Officer Martinez finished her report and said the police would follow up if any additional evidence emerged. Both of them took statements about the missing mail, specifically asking me to list anything I remembered expecting: bills, packages, personal correspondence. After they left, I went inside and started going through my records. I'd kept every piece of communication from Brenda Hutchins because she was exactly the kind of HOA president who would try to gaslight you about what she had or hadn't said. The paper trail was extensive. The first violation notice had arrived on January 10th. It was printed on official Prairie Meadows HOA letterhead with Brenda's name at the bottom in an unnecessarily large font. "Dear homeowner," it began, as if she didn't know my name despite living 3 houses down from me for 6 years. "It has come to the attention of the HOA board that your mailbox does not comply with Section 7.3 of our community bylaws regarding exterior fixtures. All mailboxes must be white with brass house numbers mounted on decorative posts approved by the Architectural Review Committee. You have 14 days to bring your property into compliance or face fines of $50 per day." I had responded within 2 days with a detailed email. I attached a copy of the bylaws showing that Section 7.3 was implemented in May 2018, 2 years after my mailbox was installed. I also included photos from the real estate listing when I bought the house, clearly showing the black mailbox, and a copy of my closing documents dated March 2019. I explained the concept of grandfather clauses politely but firmly. Brenda's response had been curt. "The rules apply to all residents, no exceptions. You have 12 days remaining." My second email had been less polite. I pointed out that making up rules that contradicted the actual bylaws was not within her authority as HOA president, and that I would be happy to bring the matter before the full HOA board if she continued to pursue it. I also noted that the bylaws required a majority vote of the board before any fines could be assessed. She had responded by sending a second violation notice, identical to the first, except the deadline had been moved up. She claimed I had ignored the first notice entirely. My third email had included a certified letter I sent to the entire HOA board, copying Brenda, outlining the situation, and requesting an emergency board meeting to address what I described as presidential overreach and harassment. 3 of the 5 board members had responded sympathetically. One told me privately that Brenda had been difficult lately and that they were working on it. Another said they had never authorized any mailbox-related fines. Brenda had responded to my board letter with a third violation notice, this time claiming that my mailbox was also structurally unsound and a hazard to snow removal equipment. She threatened immediate removal if I didn't replace it within 7 days. That notice had arrived on January 28th, 6 days ago. I compiled all of this into a PDF and emailed it to Inspector Webb along with screenshots of the group chat message from this morning. Then, I called my insurance company to report the damage and started researching mailbox tampering laws. What I found was sobering. Title 18, Section 1705 of the U.S. Code made it a federal crime to willfully or maliciously injure, tear down, or destroy any mailbox. Penalties included fines and up to 3 years in prison. Section 1708 covered theft, destruction, or obstruction of mail, with penalties up to 5 years in prison and significant fines. Brenda Hutchins, in her zealous pursuit of uniform mailbox aesthetics, had potentially committed crimes that could send her to federal prison. My phone rang. It was Tom from next door. "Hey man, I've been thinking about last night. I might have something useful." "What's that?" "My security camera. It covers my driveway, but it also catches part of the street in your front yard. Want me to check the footage?" I could have kissed him. "Yes, absolutely yes." Tom called me back 20 minutes later. "You need to see this. Come over." I grabbed my coat and headed next door. Tom had his laptop set up on his kitchen table with the security footage already queued up. His wife, Sarah, stood behind him with her arms crossed and an expression that suggested she already knew this was going to be good. "This is from yesterday, 6:47 p.m., Tom said, "about 45 minutes after you got home." He hit play. The footage was grainy and shot in night vision mode, but it was clear enough. A white pickup truck with a plow attachment drove slowly down our street, then stopped directly in front of my house. The driver sat there for almost a minute, engine running, before suddenly turning sharply and driving straight onto my lawn. The truck made a deliberate loop around my mailbox. On the second pass, the plow blade dropped and caught the mailbox post, ripping it clean out of the ground. The mailbox went flying, tumbling through the snow. The truck didn't stop. It completed the loop, returned to the street, and drove away. But not before the camera caught something crucial: the driver's face and the truck's license plate. I couldn't make out the plate number clearly in the footage, but Tom zoomed in on the driver. Even in night vision, even through the windshield glare, there was no mistaking that sharp profile and the distinctive way she gripped the steering wheel with both hands at 10 and 2, like she was in a driver's education class. Brenda Hutchins had personally destroyed my mailbox. "I'm sending this to you right now," Tom said, "and you need to send it to that postal inspector immediately." "Can I also send it to the police?" "Send it to whoever you want. That woman has been a nightmare since she became HOA president. Last year she tried to fine me because my grass was half an inch too long during a drought. Half an inch. I measured it to prove her wrong." Sarah leaned over the laptop. She also reported the Hendersons for having a political sign in their window during the election. Said it violated the neutrality clause in the HOA bylaws. There is no neutrality clause. She made it up. I thanked them profusely and forwarded the video to Inspector Webb and Officer Martinez within minutes. Webb called me back almost immediately. "Is this footage admissible? Was it recorded legally?" "It's from my neighbor's home security system, pointed at his own driveway. Minnesota is a one-party consent state for recording. It should be fine." "Good. Because this is exactly what I needed. I'm going to contact the U.S. Attorney's Office this afternoon. We have clear video evidence of mailbox destruction and likely mail theft. I'm also going to reach out to your HOA board directly. If Ms. Hutchins acted in any official capacity when she did this, the entire organization could be liable." That thought hadn't occurred to me. "Can they do that? Use HOA authority to commit federal crimes?" "They can try," Webb said, "but it won't end well for them. Stay available. This is moving quickly now." The rest of the day felt surreal. I installed a temporary mailbox using a metal stake I found in my garage, placing it exactly where the old one had been. I informed the post office of the temporary setup and confirmed that mail delivery would resume the next day. Then I waited. Officer Martinez called me that evening. We pulled the registration on the truck from your neighbor's video. It's registered to Dennis Hutchins at the same address as Brenda Hutchins. The truck matches the tire pattern we photographed at your house. I'm going to pay them a visit tomorrow morning with a warrant for the security footage from their home. People like this usually have cameras too. She was right about that. Brenda was the type who would absolutely have multiple cameras monitoring her property, probably so she could catch neighbors violating HOA rules from the comfort of her living room. That night I barely slept. I kept replaying the security footage in my mind, watching Brenda deliberately destroy my property over something as trivial as mailbox color. What kind of person does that? What kind of person commits multiple federal crimes because someone won't paint their mailbox white? The answer, I was learning, was the kind of person who becomes an HOA president. The next morning, February 4th, I was drinking coffee and watching the street when two Edina police cars pulled up in front of Brenda's house. Officer Martinez and another officer I didn't recognize walked up to the front door. I couldn't hear what was said, but body language told the story. The door opened. Brenda appeared, already gesticulating wildly. Martinez showed her some paperwork. Brenda shook her head. Martinez said something else, more firmly. Brenda reluctantly stepped aside. The officers were inside for about 30 minutes. When they emerged, they were carrying a laptop and what looked like a security system DVR. Brenda stood in her doorway wearing a pink bathrobe and an expression of absolute outrage. She was still shouting something as the officers loaded the equipment into their car and drove away. My phone buzzed. The HOA group chat was exploding. Brenda had posted, "This is a message to all residents regarding police overreach and harassment. This morning, officers entered my home with a fraudulent warrant seeking to intimidate me for enforcing HOA rules. This is a coordinated attack by certain residents who refuse to comply with our community standards. I will be taking legal action against all parties involved. The HOA stands firm on all violations, and we will not be bullied by threats or false accusations." Before I could even process that, another board member, a retired accountant named Gerald Morrison, posted a response. "Brenda, I need you to call me immediately." The board did not authorize any enforcement actions related to mailboxes. We certainly did not authorize property destruction. If you acted in the HOA's name without board approval, you may have created significant legal liability for the organization. We need to discuss this privately. Please remove your previous message. Brenda's response was instantaneous. "I am the president. I have the authority to enforce all rules. This is not up for debate." Gerald: "That's not how this works. Emergency board meeting tonight at 7. Your attendance is mandatory." I screenshotted the entire exchange and sent it to Inspector Webb with a note. "The HOA president just admitted to enforcement actions related to my mailbox in writing." Webb replied, "Perfect. See you at the board meeting." That stopped me cold. Inspector Webb was going to attend the HOA board meeting. This was escalating faster than I had imagined. I spent the afternoon doing research on HOA liability and federal crimes. What I learned was fascinating and terrifying. If Brenda had acted in her capacity as HOA president when she destroyed my mailbox, if she had believed she was enforcing HOA rules, then the HOA itself could be held liable under federal law. The organization could be sued. The board members could potentially face charges if they had knowledge of illegal activities and failed to stop them. But none of the other board members seemed to have known what Brenda was planning. Gerald's messages made that clear, which meant Brenda had gone rogue, using her position to justify what was essentially a personal vendetta. At 6:45 that evening, I walked to the community center where HOA meetings were held. It was a small building at the entrance to our subdivision, mostly used for neighborhood gatherings and the occasional kid's birthday party. Tonight it was about to become the venue for what I suspected would be the most dramatic HOA meeting in Prairie Meadows history. I arrived to find Gerald Morrison and two other board members already there: Patricia Kim, a lawyer in her 40s, and Robert Jensen, a retired firefighter. They looked stressed. Patricia was reading something on her phone with the intensity of someone reviewing a legal brief. Robert just looked angry. "Is it true?" Patricia asked me as soon as I walked in. "Did Brenda really destroy your mailbox?" "There's video footage," I said. "The police have it. So does a postal inspector." A postal inspector? Robert's eyes widened. As in federal? Mail theft and mailbox tampering are federal crimes. Patricia put her head in her hands. We're ruined. The HOA is going to be sued into oblivion. Gerald tried to sound reassuring. We didn't authorize anything. We have documentation showing we specifically told Brenda to drop the mailbox issue. We should be protected. Should be, Patricia said. That doesn't mean we are. If she claimed to be acting on behalf of the HOA, we could be named in any civil suit. Our insurance might not cover criminal acts by board members. We could lose everything. The door opened and Brenda Hutchins walked in like she owned the place, which, in a sense, she believed she did. She was dressed in business casual, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun, her expression radiating self-righteousness. Good evening, she said, taking her seat at the head of the table. I assume we're here to discuss the coordinated harassment I've been subjected to by certain residents. Brenda, Gerald said carefully, we're here to discuss your actions regarding mailbox enforcement. My actions were entirely appropriate. I enforced a clear violation of Section 7.3. The resident refused to comply despite multiple notices. Patricia leaned forward. Brenda, Section 7.3 was implemented in 2018. That mailbox was installed in 2016. Grandfather clauses apply. We've been over this. There are no grandfather clauses for safety violations. Safety violations? I couldn't stay quiet anymore. You claimed my mailbox was a hazard to snow removal equipment and then personally drove a plow truck onto my lawn and destroyed it. You want to explain how that was about safety? Brenda's face flushed. I don't know what you're talking about. There's video footage. Brenda, clear footage of you driving your husband's truck onto my property and ripping out my mailbox with a plow blade. The police have it. The postal inspector has it. You're on camera committing multiple federal crimes. For the first time since I had known her, Brenda Hutchins looked uncertain. That's ridiculous. I would never... The door opened again. Inspector Webb walked in, followed by Officer Martinez. Webb was carrying a briefcase and had the air of someone about to make people very uncomfortable. Good evening, he said. I'm Marcus Webb, U.S. Postal Inspector. I'm here as part of an ongoing federal investigation into mail tampering and theft. Ms. Hutchins, I need to speak with you. Brenda stood up so fast her chair nearly tipped over. This is a private HOA meeting. You have no authority here. Actually, I have federal authority, which supersedes your HOA bylaws. Webb opened his briefcase and pulled out several documents. I have video evidence placing you at the scene of a mailbox destruction on February 2nd. I have security footage from your own home security system obtained through a warrant this morning, showing you leaving your house at 6:43 p.m. in a white pickup truck and returning at 7:06 p.m. I have tire track analysis matching your husband's truck to the scene, and I have documented communications from you threatening to remove the mailbox if the homeowner didn't comply with HOA rules. Brenda's face had gone from flushed to pale. This is entrapment. It's not entrapment when you commit crimes on camera of your own free will. Webb pulled out another document. Title 18, Section 1705 of the U.S. Code, Destruction of Mailboxes, Section 1708, Theft or Destruction of Mail. Both federal crimes. The penalties include fines up to $250,000 and imprisonment up to 5 years for the mail theft charge alone. I didn't steal any mail. The mailbox was full when you destroyed it. Mail was scattered at the scene. Some was never recovered. That's mail theft in the eyes of federal law. Patricia Kim had her phone out and was furiously taking notes. Gerald Morrison looked like he might be sick. Robert Jensen was staring at Brenda with unconcealed disgust. Officer Martinez stepped forward. Ms. Hutchins, I also need to inform you that you're being charged under Minnesota state law with criminal damage to property, a gross misdemeanor, and potentially trespassing. You'll need to come to the station to be formally processed. This is insane! Brenda's voice had risen to a shout. I was enforcing HOA rules. That's my job as president. Your job, Gerald said quietly, is to follow the bylaws and work with the board. You don't have unilateral authority to destroy property, Brenda. You never did. Webb addressed the room. I need to make something clear to the entire board. If Ms. Hutchins claimed to be acting in an official HOA capacity when she committed these crimes, The organization may face federal scrutiny and civil liability. I recommend you consult with legal counsel immediately and cooperate fully with our investigation." Patricia was already dialing her phone. "I'm calling our HOA attorney right now." Brenda seemed to deflate. The righteous fury that had propelled her for weeks evaporated, replaced by a dawning realization of just how badly she had miscalculated. "I just wanted the neighborhood to look nice," she said weakly. "Uniform mailboxes, that's all I wanted." "You committed federal crimes over aesthetics," I said. "You destroyed my property, stole my mail, and tried to intimidate me into compliance using your position. That's not about neighborhood beauty, Brenda. That's about control." Webb closed his briefcase. "Ms. Hutchins, you'll need to come with us. We can do this voluntarily, or I can have the officer arrest you right now." Brenda looked around the room, as if hoping someone would defend her. No one did. Gerald wouldn't meet her eyes. Patricia was still on the phone with the attorney. Robert just shook his head slowly. "I'll need to call my husband," Brenda said. "You can call him from the station," Martinez said. "Let's go." As they let her out, Brenda turned back one more time. "The HOA will back me up. We have insurance for this kind of thing." Patricia covered her phone. "Not for criminal acts, Brenda. And as of this moment, you're suspended from the board pending a vote. You don't represent this organization anymore." The door closed behind them. The room fell silent. Gerald finally spoke. "We need to do damage control immediately. Patricia, what did the attorney say?" Patricia put her phone on speaker. The attorney, a woman named Linda Chen, sounded stressed but professional. "First, document everything. Every communication, every meeting, every decision. Make it crystal clear that the board did not authorize or support Ms. Hutchins's actions. Second, issue a formal statement to residents explaining the situation and distancing the HOA from her conduct. Third, cooperate fully with federal investigators. Fourth, prepare for a potential civil lawsuit from the affected homeowner." Everyone looked at me. I haven't decided if I'm suing yet," I said honestly. "Right now, I just want my mailbox replaced and some assurance this won't happen again." Linda Chen's voice came through the speaker. "That's generous, but I'd recommend the HOA proactively offer to pay for all damages, replacement costs, and any related expenses. Consider it a settlement in good faith. You want to avoid federal court if at all possible." Gerald nodded. "Agreed. We'll draft a proposal for you by tomorrow." The meeting continued for another hour as the board worked through the legal and practical implications of what Brenda had done. They voted unanimously to suspend her from the board immediately and called for a special election to replace her. They also voted to formally rescind all mailbox-related enforcement actions and to grandfather in any pre-existing mailboxes, regardless of style. As I walked home that night, I felt a strange mix of vindication and exhaustion. I had been right about the grandfather clause, right to document everything, right to push back against Brenda's overreach. But it had taken video evidence of a federal crime to prove it. How many other homeowners had simply complied rather than fight? How many had paid fines or made expensive changes because they didn't know their rights or didn't have the evidence to prove harassment? The next morning, February 5th, I received an email from Gerald Morrison with an attached letter from the HOA's attorney. The letter formally apologized for Ms. Hutchins's conduct, acknowledged that the HOA had no legal basis for the mailbox violation notices, and offered to pay for replacement of my mailbox, repair of my lawn, reimbursement for any lost mail or related expenses, and a settlement payment of $5,000 for the inconvenience and distress caused. In exchange, I would agree not to pursue civil litigation against the HOA. It was more than fair. I signed the agreement that afternoon. Inspector Webb called me later that day with an update. "We recovered some of your mail. A few pieces were found scattered near where you found the mailbox. We're still processing everything, but it looks like you had a couple of bills, some junk mail, and a Netflix DVD." Wait, people still use Netflix DVDs? Apparently you do. He also told me that Brenda had been formally charged with destruction of a mailbox under federal law and theft of mail. The U.S. Attorney's Office was taking the case seriously because there had been a pattern of similar incidents in other states involving HOA presidents destroying non-compliant fixtures. They wanted to make an example to deter future occurrences. "What kind of sentence is she looking at?" I asked. "If convicted, Probably fines and probation for a first offense. But it'll be a federal conviction on her record. That's no small thing. The state charges for criminal property damage and trespassing were proceeding separately through Minnesota courts. Brenda was facing misdemeanor charges there as well. Over the next few weeks, the story spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. The local news picked it up. HOA president faces federal charges for mailbox destruction. It ran on every Twin Cities station. The story went mildly viral on social media, with people sharing their own HOA horror stories in the comments. Brenda Hutchins became a cautionary tale, a symbol of HOA overreach gone catastrophically wrong. The subdivision's property values actually increased slightly because prospective buyers saw that the community had dealt decisively with an abusive board member. The new HOA president, elected in an emergency vote, was Tom from next door. His first official act was to eliminate the mailbox uniformity rule entirely. Brenda's preliminary hearing was scheduled for late March. I was subpoenaed as a witness. The courtroom was surprisingly full. Apparently, federal mailbox tampering cases were rare enough to attract attention from legal observers and local journalists. Brenda's attorney tried to argue that she had been enforcing legitimate HOA rules and that the destruction was accidental. The prosecutor dismantled that argument methodically. They showed the video footage from Tom's security camera. Brenda deliberately turning onto my lawn, making multiple passes, dropping the plow blade with obvious intent. They showed her threatening text messages and violation notices. They showed the HOA board's communications expressly telling her to drop the enforcement action. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Margaret Kowalski, watched the video twice. Then she looked at Brenda over her reading glasses. "Ms. Hutchins, I've been a federal judge for 23 years. I've seen people commit crimes for money, for revenge, for ideology. This is the first time I've seen someone commit multiple federal offenses over mailbox aesthetics. Do you understand the seriousness of what you've done?" Brenda, looking small and defeated in her chair, nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. I'm not convinced you do. You held a position of trust in your community. Instead of using that position to serve your neighbors, you used it to harass and intimidate someone who was legally in the right. When that didn't work, you escalated to property destruction and mail theft. These are not trivial crimes. The integrity of the postal system depends on public confidence that mail is safe and that mailboxes are inviolable. People like you undermine that confidence." Brenda's attorney stood. "Your Honor, my client deeply regrets her actions. She's willing to accept responsibility and make full restitution." Judge Kowalski looked at the prosecutor. "What's the government's position on a plea agreement?" The prosecutor, a young man named David Park, stood as well. "Your Honor, given the defendant's cooperation and lack of prior criminal history, the government is willing to offer a plea to one count of mailbox destruction under Section 1705. We'd recommend probation, community service, full restitution, and a permanent restraining order preventing the defendant from holding any HOA office." "What about the mail theft charge?" "We'd drop that in exchange for the plea. The main mail recovered was junk mail and a Netflix DVD. The victim has indicated he doesn't want to pursue maximum penalties." That was true. Webb had asked me if I wanted to push for both charges, and I had said no. Brenda needed consequences, but destroying her life entirely over a mailbox seemed excessive. I wanted justice, not revenge. Judge Kowalski considered this. "Ms. Hutchins, are you willing to plead guilty to one count of mailbox destruction?" Brenda stood shakily. "Yes, Your Honor." "Then here's what's going to happen. You'll plead guilty. You'll be sentenced to 2 years of probation. You'll perform 200 hours of community service. You'll pay full restitution to the victim, including all costs associated with mailbox replacement, lawn repair, and related expenses. You'll have no contact with the victim except through official HOA channels if necessary, and even then only in writing with oversight from the HOA board. You will resign immediately from any and all HOA positions, and you are permanently barred from holding HOA office in any community. Do you accept these terms?" "Yes, Your Honor." The plea was entered. The state charges in Minnesota were resolved with a similar agreement: guilty plea to criminal property damage, probation, more community service, more fines. Brenda's reign as HOA president was officially over. I attended the sentencing hearing in May, 4 months after she destroyed my mailbox. Brenda made a brief statement apologizing to me, to the neighborhood, and to the court. She looked genuinely remorseful, though it was hard to tell if she regretted her actions or just regretted getting caught. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it short. Brenda, you had power in our community and you abused it. You could have listened when people told you that you were wrong. You could have worked within the system. Instead, you decided that your vision of a perfect neighborhood was more important than respecting people's property and rights. I hope you learn from this. I hope other HOA board members learn from this. Power without accountability is tyranny, even at the neighborhood level. Judge Kowalski sentenced her according to the plea agreement. Brenda walked out of the courthouse a convicted federal criminal, her reputation destroyed, her finances strained by fines and legal fees, all because she couldn't tolerate a black mailbox in a subdivision that required white ones. The HOA paid for a beautiful new mailbox installation at my house. They hired a professional landscaping company to repair my lawn. The grass came back even better than before. I framed one of Brenda's violation notices and hung it in my garage as a reminder that documentation matters and that standing up to bullies, even petty bureaucratic ones, is worth the effort. Tom, now HOA president, turned out to be exactly what the neighborhood needed. He streamlined the rules, eliminated the most ridiculous bylaws, and established a formal appeals process for any enforcement actions. The subdivision became a more relaxed, more neighborly place. People actually enjoyed the HOA meetings now, which I never thought would be possible. Inspector Webb called me one final time in June to close out his case file. You know, this story made the rounds at the Postal Inspector Training Academy. They're using it as a case study in mail tampering investigations. You're famous in federal law enforcement circles. That's not really the kind of fame I was looking for, he laughed. Maybe not. But you did the right thing. You documented everything, you stood your ground, and you made sure someone who abused their power faced real consequences. That matters. After we hung up, I went outside to check my mail. My new mailbox was identical to my old one. Black steel, sturdy post, same location. The HOA had even special ordered the exact model to match what I had before. It was a small victory maybe, but it was mine. I pulled out a stack of mail. Bills, advertisements, a package from Amazon. Normal, boring, everyday mail. The kind of mail that represents the invisible infrastructure of American life. The mundane miracle of communication and commerce that we take for granted until someone like Brenda Hutchins decides that her aesthetic preferences matter more than federal law. The Netflix DVD that had been in my mailbox the day Brenda destroyed it had never been recovered. The Postal Service had reimbursed Netflix for it. I'd switched to streaming after that. It seemed easier. But sometimes, on quiet winter evenings when the snow was falling and the plows were running, I thought about that DVD and everything that had cascaded from its loss. A federal investigation, criminal charges, a cautionary tale about the dangers of petty tyranny in suburban America. All because someone decided that mailbox uniformity was worth committing crimes to enforce. The thing about HOAs is that they exist in this weird legal gray area between private clubs and quasi-governmental organizations. They have real power. They can fine you, place liens on your house, foreclose if you don't pay. But they're run by volunteers, by neighbors who often have no training in governance or law. Sometimes you get good people who want to improve the community. Sometimes you get people like Brenda who crave the power without understanding the responsibility that comes with it. I learned a lot from the mailbox incident. I learned that documentation is everything, that video evidence is worth its weight in gold, that the federal government takes mail crimes seriously, and that standing up to bullies requires courage, but usually pays off. I also learned that my neighbors were better than I had given them credit for. When the story came out, dozens of people reached out to share their own experiences with Brenda's overreach. I wasn't the only one she had harassed. I was just the only one who had fought back hard enough to create consequences. The final piece of the story came in August, 6 months after the original incident. I received a letter from Brenda Hutchins. It was handwritten, 3 pages long, and appeared to be genuinely heartfelt. She apologized for everything, for the harassment, for the property destruction, for abusing her position, for refusing to listen when people tried to correct her. She explained that she had been going through some personal issues at the time, that she had become obsessed with control because so much of her life felt out of control, and that she had lost perspective on what actually mattered. She didn't make excuses exactly, but she provided context. Her husband had lost his job. Her mother was dying of cancer. She had felt powerless in the face of real problems, so she had compensated by micromanaging things she could control, like neighborhood mailbox colors. It didn't justify what she had done, but it made her seem more human, less like a cartoon villain. The letter ended with a request. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for it anyway. Not for my sake, but because I think you're the kind of person who believes people can change and do better. I'm trying to do better. I'm in therapy. I'm volunteering at a food bank for my community service, and it's teaching me a lot about real problems and real service. I don't expect us to be friends, but I hope someday you can think of me as someone who made terrible mistakes and learned from them, rather than as the villain in your mailbox story. I read the letter 3 times. Then I wrote back. My response was shorter. Brenda, thank you for the apology. I accept it. I don't think you're a bad person. I think you made bad choices and let power corrupt your judgment. I'm glad you're getting help and learning from this. I hope your mother recovers and your husband finds work. Take care of yourself. I never heard from her again. According to neighborhood gossip, she and her husband moved to Wisconsin later that year, seeking a fresh start away from the community where she had become infamous. I hoped they found what they were looking for. As for me, I settled back into normal life. The mailbox incident became a story I told at parties, usually with a lot of embellishment and dramatic reenactment. People loved it. Everyone has HOA horror stories, but not everyone has federal charges and postal inspectors involved. My black steel mailbox still stands in front of my house in Edina, Minnesota. It receives mail every day without incident. The grass around it is green and healthy. The neighborhood is quiet and peaceful. Tom runs the HOA with a light touch and a sense of humor. Life is good. But I never take for granted the small freedoms we have. The freedom to paint your mailbox whatever color you want if you got there before some arbitrary rule was passed. The freedom to stand up to petty tyrants. The freedom to fight back when someone with a little bit of power tries to abuse it. These freedoms matter, even when they seem trivial, because tyranny always starts small. It starts with someone deciding that their preferences matter more than your rights. It starts with someone using their position to bully rather than serve. My mailbox was where I drew the line. It was black when I bought the house. It was black when Brenda tried to make me change it, and it's black now. That's not stubbornness. That's principle. That's standing up for the idea that rules should be fair, that enforcement should be proportional, and that no one, not even an HOA president, gets to destroy your property because they don't like how it looks. The federal government agreed with me. Federal. So did my neighbors, my HOA board, and ultimately, even Brenda herself. It took a federal investigation, criminal charges, and months of legal proceedings to get there. But justice was served. Not the dramatic movie-style justice where the bad guy goes to prison forever, but real-world justice where someone faces consequences, learns a lesson, and everyone moves forward a little wiser. My mailbox is just a mailbox, but it became a symbol of something larger. The idea that even the smallest acts of resistance matter, that documentation and persistence can overcome corruption, and that sometimes, just sometimes, the system actually works the way it's supposed to. Every time I check my mail now, I'm reminded of that. And every time, I'm grateful that I live in a country where destroying someone's mailbox is a federal crime, where postal inspectors take their jobs seriously, where neighbors help each other with security footage, and where even HOA presidents have to follow the law. That's the real lesson of the mailbox story. Not that HOAs are evil, or that all board members are tyrants, but that accountability matters at every level. Whether you're the President of the United States or the President of the Prairie Meadows Homeowners Association, you don't get to break the law because you think your cause is just. You don't get to destroy property because someone won't follow rules that don't actually apply to them. And if you try, there are consequences. Brenda Hutchins learned that the hard way. I learned it too, in a different sense. I learned that standing up for yourself is hard but necessary, that the law is there for a reason, and that sometimes the most important battles are the ones that seem the smallest. My mailbox is black. It's always been black. And it's going to stay black for as long as I live in this house. Not because black is better than white, not because I'm opposed to neighborhood aesthetics, but because it's mine. It was there first, and no one gets to take that away from me without consequences. That's the American dream, right there, in a mailbox. The dream of property rights and due process and the rule of law. The dream that you can stand up to bullies and win. The dream that justice, even slow and imperfect justice, eventually prevails. My mailbox stands as a testament to that dream. And every day, the postal carrier delivers my mail to it, as they should, as federal law requires, as Brenda Hutchins learned they always would, no matter how much she wished otherwise. The snow comes every winter to Edina. The plows run, the mail gets delivered, and my black mailbox stands exactly where it's always stood, a small but stubborn monument to the idea that some things are worth fighting for, even when they seem too small to matter, especially when they seem too small to matter. Because that's when tyranny thinks it can win.